Tonight, we are traveling to the coldest ceiling on Earth, a place where darkness settles for months and life refuses to leave. Beneath the Arctic ice, an entire living world waits in silence. For much of the year, the ocean here is sealed beneath thick ice, cutting off sunlight completely. The water below remains just above freezing, never fully still, never entirely quiet. For a long time, this darkness was believed to be empty, a seasonal pause where biology simply stopped. But modern research has revealed movements where none was expected. Beneath the ice, water continues to flow, slowed by salt and pressure rather than frozen into place. The ice itself is not solid, but layered and porous, threaded with narrow channels where liquid water lingers and microscopic life finds refuge. Within these hidden spaces, microscopic life finds refuge. Ice algae grow inside the frozen layers, forming food webs long before open water ever appears. Some organisms survive on energy stored months earlier, others feed quietly within the ice itself. Bodies here are fragile, movement is slow, life learns patience instead of speed. But how much life can truly exist beneath a frozen ceiling? What kinds of creatures survive where light and warmth rarely reach? How does biology continue when darkness lasts longer than memory? And what does this hidden world reveal about the limits of life itself? Tonight, we drift slowly beneath the Arctic ice, where survival is measured in stillness rather than struggle. But before we begin, if you enjoy videos like this, slow, soothing, and quietly filled with wonder, I'd love it if you gave this one a like and maybe tap subscribe. And if you'd be so kind, let me know in the comments, where are you winding down from tonight and what time is it there? It's always a joy to see how far across the world this little sleepy corner of science travels. Now take a deep breath, let your shoulders soften, and together let us slip quietly beneath the living ice of the Arctic. Beneath the frozen ceiling of the Arctic Ocean, water continues its slow, deliberate movement, not in defiance of the ice above, but because of the quiet physical rules that govern the sea. Unlike freshwater lakes that lock into stillness once winter tightens its grip, the ocean carries salt within every drop. This salt reshapes the way cold behaves. As temperatures fall, seawater resists freezing, its molecules disrupted just enough to delay solidification. Ice forms gradually at the surface, while liquid water persists below, dense, dark, and gently mobile. As ice crystals grow, they expel salt into the surrounding water. This process creates pockets of denser, colder brine that sinks, slipping downward into the layers beneath the ice. The surface freezes not as a single lid, but as a shifting skin that thickens over time, always interacting with the water below. This quiet exchange prevents the ocean from becoming a static block of ice. Movement continues, subtle but constant, carried by differences in salinity, temperature, and depth that never fully disappear. Pressure deepens this stability. With every meter below the surface, the weight of the ocean presses downward, slightly lowering the temperature at which water freezes. The sea gains a narrow margin where liquid can persist, even as the world above hardens. Within this margin, slow currents flow, tracing paths shaped by Earth's rotation and distant winds. Water borne far from the Arctic drifts beneath the ice, carrying heat measured not in warmth but in survival. It is enough to keep motion alive. These currents move patiently, replacing water that cools and sinks, circulating nutrients, oxygen, and dissolved life through the darkness. There is no rush here. The movement is measured in days, months, sometimes years, yet it never truly stops. Even at the height of winter, the ocean breathes in its own quiet way, a system balanced between freezing and flow. This persistence changes everything. Where water remains liquid, chemistry continues. Salts stay dissolved, gases remain available, and microscopic reactions unfold without interruption. The cold slows them, but never silences them. The ocean becomes a place of endurance rather than dormancy, where life does not need to flee or vanish, only to wait. Above, the ice may seem absolute, an unbroken barrier sealing the sea away from light and air. Below, the water tells a different story. It moves, exchanges, and carries continuity forward through the dark months. This hidden motion creates a stable foundation, a living space beneath the ice where existence remains possible, not energetic, not abundant, but steady. In this slow circulating darkness, the Arctic Ocean remains alive, held together by water that never truly stops moving. What appears from above as a single unbroken sheet is, upon closer approach, something far more complex. Arctic sea ice is not a solid wall, but a layered body, grown slowly from countless freezing moments stacked one upon another. As seawater turns to ice, it does so imperfectly, leaving behind tiny imperfections, pockets where salt and liquid are pushed aside rather than locked in place. Over time, these imperfections connect, forming a delicate interior architecture hidden from view. Within the ice, narrow channels of liquid water remain. They twist and branch like faint veins, filled with concentrated brine that never quite freezes. These spaces shift as temperatures rise and fall, widening slightly during milder moments, tightening when cold deepens its grip. The ice breathes in this way, expanding and contracting, its interior never fully still. Light filters faintly through upper layers, scattering into soft blue shadows that settle into the channels below. This porous structure transforms ice from a barrier into a boundary that can be crossed. Within these liquid passages, water still moves, exchanging salts, gases, and traces of organic matter with the ocean beneath. The channels remain connected to the larger sea, allowing chemistry to continue uninterrupted. What might seem like confinement instead becomes access, a narrow world where movement is limited but possible. For the smallest inhabitants, these spaces offer shelter rather than danger. Inside the ice, conditions change more slowly than in the open water below. Temperature swings are softened, currents are muted, and predators from the surrounding ocean struggle to enter these tight corridors. The ice becomes a quiet refuge, a place where motion slows and survival depends on patience instead of strength. Life adapts to the scale of this environment. Microscopic organisms settle along the channel walls, clinging to surfaces that remain stable for months at a time. Nutrients collect here, trapped gently rather than washed away. Within these slender passageways, existence unfolds at a reduced pace, shaped by diffusion rather than flow, by persistence rather than speed. As winter deepens, the channels do not disappear. They narrow, concentrating salt and life together, creating conditions that appear hostile yet remain livable to those shaped for them. When temperatures soften again, even briefly, the channels widen, reconnecting more freely with the sea. This cycle repeats year after year, a quiet rhythm woven into the ice itself. The result is a structure that blurs the boundary between frozen and liquid, between shelter and exposure. Sea ice becomes a living surface, not because it moves on its own, but because it allows movement within it. Its layered body holds space for water, for chemistry, and for life that knows how to remain small, slow, and enduring. From a distance, the ice seems absolute. Within it, a hidden world persists, protected not by hardness, but by complexity. In these narrow, liquid pathways, survival is made possible by the simple fact that the ice was never truly solid at all. Within the frozen layers of Arctic sea ice, life settles into spaces so small They are measured in stillness rather than distance. These microhabitats form along the inner walls of liquid-filled passages where ice meets brine and the boundary between solid and water softens. Here, the environment changes slowly. Light arrives dim and scattered, temperatures remain steady, and chemical conditions fluctuate gently instead of violently. What appears harsh from the outside becomes, within the ice, a place of relative balance. The organisms that live here are shaped by confinement. They are small, flattened, or filamentous, designed not to swim freely, but to cling, spread, or rest against surfaces that persist for months at a time. Motion is restrained, not out of weakness, but efficiency. In these narrow corridors, drifting would mean loss. Remaining close to the ice provides stability, access to nutrients, and protection from the wider ocean beyond. Life adapts not by escaping the cold, but by embedding itself within it. Energy arrives quietly. Nutrients concentrate along the channel walls, guided by slow diffusion rather than flowing currents. Microscopic algae anchor themselves to the ice, forming thin films that capture what little light filters down from above. Bacteria gather nearby, breaking down organic traces and releasing compounds that can be reused again and again. This close arrangement allows survival through cooperation rather than abundance, with waste from one process becoming fuel for another. As winter deepens, the ice tightens, channels narrow, salinity increases, and liquid space contracts. The organisms that remain endure these changes through tolerance rather than resistance. Their metabolism slows, chemical reactions stretch out over longer spans of time, and growth becomes almost imperceptible. Life does not withdraw from the ice during these months. It holds position, waiting within conditions that change predictably and gently enough to survive. When seasonal shifts loosen the ice, even slightly, the microhabitats respond. Channels widen, exchange increases, and nutrients are redistributed. The ice does not need to melt for life to resume activity. It only needs to relax its grip. These subtle transitions allow organisms to adjust without sudden disruption, maintaining continuity in an environment defined by cycles rather than extremes. Over time, the ice itself becomes a living surface, not alive in the way a creature is alive, but active as a host. Its internal structure creates space, regulates change, and supports the chemistry required for survival. The boundary between habitat and inhabitant blurs. Ice shapes life, and life subtly alters the ice, darkening surfaces, trapping heat, and influencing how freezing and thawing proceed. In this way, the frozen layers of the Arctic Ocean become more than shelter. They function as architecture, offering form and stability to organisms built for patience. Within these narrow spaces, life continues quietly, integrated into the ice rather than threatened by it, existing not despite the frozen world, but because of it. Long before open water ever darkens with plankton, nourishment begins quietly within the ice itself. Pressed against the underside of frozen layers and woven into their inner passages, ice algae form a thin living skin that stretches across vast distances. They arrive early, well before most of the Arctic stirs, settling into places where light is weak but reliable in its return. Their presence is subtle, easily overlooked, yet their influence reaches far beyond the narrow spaces they occupy. These organisms are built for restraint. They grow slowly, conserving energy, using pigments tuned to capture faint blue light filtered through snow and ice. Instead of drifting freely, they remain attached, clinging to rough ice surfaces that offer stability through months of darkness. Here, Growth is not measured in bursts, but in patience. While the surface world appears dormant, this thin layer continues to work, converting light into stored energy, molecule by molecule. Nearly everything in the Arctic marine ecosystem traces its beginning back to this quiet activity. When ice algae grow, even modestly, they create a foundation that other lives will later rely upon. Their organic material feeds microscopic grazers, which in turn support larger creatures as energy slowly moves upward through the system. By the time fish, birds, and mammals become visible participants, the initial transfer has already occurred, hidden within frozen ceilings few ever see. The timing of this process shapes the entire rhythm of Arctic life. Ice algae bloom early, often weeks before open water plankton appears. This head start matters. It ensures that when animals begin to stir from winter's stillness, nourishment is already present, waiting rather than arriving late. Some organisms synchronize their reproduction to this moment, releasing young just as food becomes available. Others rely on reserves accumulated during this narrow window, carrying its energy forward through long months of scarcity. When spring approaches and the ice begins to soften, fragments of algae loosen and drift downward. This slow rain of organic matter feeds communities below, including creatures on the seafloor that may never interact directly with the ice itself. In this way, ice algae connect surface, water column, and bottom into a single living system, moving nourishment downward as gently as it was created. Once the ice finally breaks apart, these organisms fade from view. Their active season ends not with drama, but with quiet completion. The role they played remains embedded in the bodies of countless Arctic inhabitants, carried forward invisibly. Life waits through darkness, not idle, but prepared, shaped by cycles that repeat without haste or excess. The dominance of ice algae lies not in abundance, but in timing and placement. They exist exactly where they are needed, precisely when the system requires them most. Unseen, uncelebrated, and largely inaccessible, they continue to feed the Arctic year after year, reminding the frozen ocean that even its most essential forces work best when they move quietly. As light fades and food thins beneath the Arctic ice, survival shifts away from pursuit and toward preparation. Long before the darkest months arrive, many creatures begin to store what they will later rely upon. Energy is set aside quietly, layered into fat reserves built not for movement, but for waiting. These reserves are not excess. They are careful savings, accumulated during brief seasons of availability and held through long stretches when feeding becomes uncertain or impossible. In this environment, bodies are shaped less by strength than by restraint. Fat serves as both fuel and insulation, protecting vital tissues while offering a slow, steady source of energy. It is used gradually, almost imperceptibly, allowing life to continue without visible activity. What matters is not how much is stored, but how evenly it can be spent. Sudden bursts would mean loss. Efficiency ensures survival. As winter settles in, metabolism slows, heart rates drop, movement becomes minimal, and biochemical reactions stretch over longer intervals. The body learns to operate at its quietest setting, conserving heat and energy by reducing every non-essential function. Growth pauses. Repair continues only where necessary. Time itself seems to widen, allowing days to pass without demand. Life does not stop, but it moves inward, sustained by what was gathered before. In this slowed state, starvation does not follow the familiar pattern seen elsewhere. There is no frantic depletion, no rapid decline. Instead, there is balance. Stored energy is released in controlled measures, calibrated to match the reduced pace of living. Muscles remain intact, organs remain functional, and the line between nourishment and absence blurs. Hunger becomes a background condition rather than a crisis, folded quietly into daily existence. This strategy reshapes behavior as well as physiology. Feeding is not expected year round. Many creatures do not search for food once darkness deepens. They simply remain where conditions are stable, avoiding unnecessary movement that would increase energy loss. Rest becomes a form of action. Stillness becomes participation in the environment rather than withdrawal from it. Even so, this endurance is not limitless. Survival depends on timing and preparation, on having accumulated enough to last until light and food return. The Arctic does not forgive miscalculation. Yet for those shaped by this rhythm, the balance usually holds. Their bodies are tuned to the length of winter, to the steady drawdown of reserves, and to the eventual easing of scarcity. When feeding resumes, it does so without urgency. Metabolism rises slowly, matching availability rather than rushing to reclaim what was lost. The cycle continues, not as a struggle against starvation, but as a practiced exchange between presence and absence. In this world, endurance replaces urgency. Survival unfolds, not through resistance, but through acceptance of a pace that favors patience over pursuit, allowing life to persist quietly through months without eating. In the drifting darkness beneath the Arctic ice, some of the most important lives are nearly invisible. Copepods move quietly through the water, small enough to be mistaken for drifting debris, yet central enough to shape the fate of the entire system. Their significance does not come from size or strength, but from position. They exist at a crucial crossing point where energy changes form, passing from microscopic producers into bodies large enough to be eaten by something else. While larger animals draw attention through movement and form, copepods work through presence and number. They gather energy produced earlier in the season, often long before winter closes in, and store it within compact bodies built for efficiency. Lipid reserves fill much of their internal space, turning brief moments of abundance into months of survival. In this way, energy becomes portable, carried gently through the dark by creatures that require almost nothing to persist. As winter deepens, copepods descend into calmer layers of the ocean. Movement slows, feeding pauses, and metabolism drops to a quiet rhythm. Their bodies remain suspended, neither fully active nor completely dormant. This reduced state allows stored energy to last far longer than it otherwise could. Time stretches. Days pass without visible change. Life continues at a pace that matches the stillness of the surrounding water. When feeding does occur, it is precise. Copepods graze on microscopic life when available, converting fragile particles into concentrated nourishment. This transformation is subtle, but essential. Fish larvae, small fish, and larger filter feeders rely on copepods as an accessible source of energy, one that bridges the gap between the smallest producers and the larger animals that cannot feed directly on them. Without this transfer, much of the Arctic's productivity would remain locked in forms unusable to most life. Winter survival depends on restraint rather than resistance. Copepods do not search desperately for food when it disappears. They wait, guided by internal reserves and seasonal rhythms written into their physiology. Their life cycles are timed to return of light, allowing reproduction to begin when conditions improve. Eggs are released when food will soon be present, aligning the next generation with opportunity rather than scarcity. Because copepods are so numerous and so evenly distributed, their role remains steady even as conditions shift. They absorb fluctuations, smoothing extremes that might otherwise ripple upward through the food web. In doing so, they provide reliability in an environment defined by uncertainty. The Arctic depends less on rare events than on processes that repeat with quiet consistency, and copepods embody that principle. Their presence holds the system together not through dominance, but through connection. Energy flows through them calmly, efficiently, and repeatedly. In the still months beneath the ice, while larger creatures slow and retreat, these tiny carriers remain, preserving continuity. The Arctic's strength rests not in its giants, but in these small, persistent lives that move energy forward, season after season, without needing to be seen. Within Arctic waters that hover near the boundary between liquid and solid, some fish continue to move with quiet assurance. The danger they face is not the cold itself, but the moment when cold becomes ice. When freezing begins inside living tissue, crystals expand sharply, tearing delicate structures apart. Cells rupture, circulation collapses, and survival ends quickly. Cold can be endured. Freezing cannot. Arctic fish are shaped around this distinction, their bodies tuned to avoid the formation of ice from within. Their defense begins at the molecular scale. Flowing through blood and tissues are specialized proteins that interact directly with ice. These antifreeze compounds do not warm the body or raise its temperature. Instead, they bind to the smallest forming ice crystals, coating their surfaces and preventing them from growing. What might have become sharp edges remain blunt and incomplete, unable to spread. Ice is held in check not by force, but by interruption. This chemistry allows internal fluids to remain liquid even when surrounding water drops below the usual freezing point. Blood continues to flow, cells maintain their shape, organs function within a narrow but dependable margin. The fish do not fight the cold, they coexist with it, supported by biochemical tools refined over countless generations. Each molecule acts quietly, doing just enough to preserve continuity without excess. The difference between cold and freezing becomes clear in this environment. Cold slows reactions, thickens fluids, and reduces motion. These effects can be managed through reduced activity and adjusted physiology. Freezing, however, introduces structure where flexibility is required. Ice crystals impose rigidity where life depends on movement. By preventing crystallization, Arctic fish preserve softness at the core, allowing slow but stable function even as the surrounding world stiffens. These antifreeze proteins are produced seasonally, increasing as winter approaches and declining when conditions ease. Their presence reflects anticipation rather than reaction. The body prepares in advance, guided by signals of shortening light and cooling water. Survival depends on readiness rather than response. Once freezing begins, it is already too late. Internally, the chemistry works in concert with other adaptations. Cell membranes contain fats that remain flexible at low temperatures. Enzymes function efficiently in the cold, avoiding shutdown. Circulation remains steady, delivering oxygen without urgency. Every system supports the same goal, maintaining internal fluidity in an external world that threatens to solidify. Movement under these conditions is slow and deliberate. Energy is conserved, not spent. The fish drift, turn gently, and feed when opportunity allows, never rushing. Their bodies are not insulated from cold, but protected from the transformation that cold can bring. Ice remains outside, held at bay by invisible boundaries drawn molecule by molecule. In this way, Arctic fish inhabit a space just short of freezing, living within a precise balance that leaves little room for error. Their survival rests on chemistry that favors restraint and control. Beneath the ice, where solid and liquid meet, life persists not by warming the cold, but by preventing it from ever becoming solid within. Beneath the Arctic ice, where movement is slow and visibility is brief, the Arctic cod drifts through a world shaped around it. This fish does not command attention through size or speed. Its importance lies in position and persistence. From the earliest stages of its life, it occupies the narrow space between abundance and scarcity, carrying energy through the system with quiet consistency. Arctic cod are born into cold that does not soften for infancy. From the moment they hatch, they exist beneath ice that filters light and limits warmth. Their early life unfolds among hidden currents and suspended particles, where survival depends on timing rather than strength. They feed on small drifting organisms that appear in pulses, often linked to earlier processes that began within the ice itself. Growth is slow, but it is steady, shaped by an environment that rewards efficiency over excess. As they mature, Arctic cod become a living corridor through which energy moves upward. What they consume is transformed into flesh that is accessible to larger bodies. Birds plunge from above to catch them near openings in the ice. Seals hunt them below, tracing familiar routes through dark water. Whales follow their movements across vast distances, arriving where cod gather in dense, temporary concentrations. Each predator relies not on constant abundance, but on the predictability of cod presence within seasonal cycles. This dependence creates balance. Arctic cod convert scattered microscopic nourishment into a form that sustains larger lives without exhausting the system. They are numerous enough to feed many, yet restrained enough to avoid collapse. Their role is not dominance, but connection. Remove them, and the links between lower and upper layers weaken, leaving gaps that cannot be easily filled. Life for Arctic cod remains tied to the ice throughout its duration. They shelter near its underside, using it as cover from predators and as a reference point for movement. Even as adults, they rarely stray far from frozen ceilings, navigating a space shaped by shadow and structure. The ice offers more than protection. It defines where food gathers and where safety persists, guiding cod through a landscape that changes slowly but relentlessly. Their bodies reflect this relationship. Metabolism remains conservative, movement controlled, and growth measured. Energy is stored carefully, allowing survival through darker months when feeding opportunities shrink. Reproduction follows familiar rhythms, ensuring young emerge when conditions allow a narrow chance of success. Nothing here is rushed. Continuity matters more than speed. Though rarely seen by human eyes, Arctic cod sustain the visible life of the region. They support migrations, hunting seasons, and the presence of giants that define the Arctic in imagination. Yet they themselves remain nearly invisible, moving calmly through cold water beneath ice that conceals their importance. In this hidden role, Arctic cod hold the Arctic together. Their existence threads energy, time, and survival into a single, quiet pathway, allowing life above and below the ice to persist as one connected system. In the dim world beneath the Arctic ice, form begins to lose its importance. Light arrives weakly, scattered into pale traces that rarely travel far. In this environment, being visible offers little advantage. Many creatures respond by becoming something close to unseen, their bodies fading into the water until boundaries soften and outlines dissolve. Transparency emerges not as absence, but as adaptation, a quiet alignment with a place where light itself is uncertain. These transparent bodies do not reflect the world so much as allow it to pass through, Tissues lack heavy pigmentation, muscles are arranged simply, and internal structures are reduced to what is necessary for survival. The result is a form that blends seamlessly into its surroundings, difficult to detect even at close range. Predators that rely on contrast find little to focus on. Movement becomes the only clue, and even that is kept minimal. Transparency also carries an energetic advantage. Producing pigments, maintaining thick tissues, and building complex visual features require resources that are scarce beneath the ice. By simplifying their bodies, these organisms reduce the cost of existing. Less material means less energy needed for growth and repair. Every saved unit matters in a place where food arrives briefly and unpredictably. The body becomes a vessel of restraint, shaped to conserve rather than display. Motion follows the same logic. Transparent creatures often drift instead of swim, allowing currents to carry them gently through the water. Active movement is reserved for brief moments when adjustment is necessary. This passive style reduces energy use further, aligning survival with stillness rather than speed. In the absence of strong light cues, there is little reason to chase or flee quickly. Remaining indistinct offers safety enough. Perception changes as well. Sight, though present, is not dominant. Eyes may be large, sensitive to faint glimmers, or small and simple, attuned only to movement. Some creatures rely more heavily on touch or subtle pressure changes, sensing the water itself rather than shapes within it. Awareness becomes diffuse, spread across the body instead of focused forward. This allows navigation without revealing presence, a way of knowing without announcing existence. In such forms, seeing and being seen are no longer equal forces. Transparency breaks the balance. A creature may detect shadows, vibrations, or chemical traces while remaining visually absent. This asymmetry favors survival in a world where encounters are rare and energy must be preserved. Remaining unnoticed is not an act of hiding, but of fitting precisely into the environment's limits. Over generations, transparency becomes refined. Bodies grow thinner, edges softer, movements slower. Nothing here is accidental. Each feature reflects countless moments when being less visible meant continuing to exist. The ice above filters light. The water below absorbs it. Between these layers, life adapts by letting go of form wherever possible. In this near darkness, transparency is not fragility. It is confidence in subtlety, an acceptance that survival beneath the ice depends not on standing out, but on becoming almost indistinguishable from the quiet world that surrounds it. In the near freezing darkness beneath the Arctic ice, jellyfish drift with an ease that seems out of place. They do not resist the cold with insulation or heat. Instead, their soft bodies accept it, yielding gently to temperatures that slow and still most other forms of life. Composed largely of water, their tissues mirror the surrounding sea, reducing the stress that cold imposes on more rigid structures. Where hardness would crack, softness remains intact. This simple composition grants resilience. Without dense bones, thick muscles, or complex internal machinery, jellyfish avoid many of the failures cold can cause. Their cells are suspended in a fluid balance that tolerates slow chemical reactions and reduced motion. The cold seeps through them evenly, leaving no sharp gradients to disrupt function. Life continues not through resistance, but through alignment with the environment itself. Movement here is unhurried by design. Jellyfish pulse gently, their bells contracting and releasing in a steady rhythm that requires little energy. Each motion pushes them forward just enough, allowing currents to carry them the rest of the way. In a world where food appears sporadically and energy is precious, this slow travel conserves resources while maintaining presence. There is no need to hurry where waiting offers the same reward. Their feeding reflects this pace. Tentacles trail quietly behind, armed with cells that react on contact rather than pursuit. When prey drifts close, capture happens without chase. This passive strategy fits the Arctic's rhythm, where encounters are infrequent and unpredictability favors readiness over speed. The jellyfish remains open to opportunity, expending almost nothing until the moment arrives. Cold enhances this way of life. Reduced temperatures slow metabolism, extending the time jellyfish can persist between meals. Growth proceeds gradually, often stretching across long spans with few interruptions. There is no rush to reach size or maturity. Survival favors those who endure rather than those who accelerate. The jellyfish body, flexible and forgiving, adapts to this extended timeline with little adjustment. In the dim light beneath the ice, their forms catch faint glimmers, translucent bells glowing softly before dissolving back into the water. Visibility offers neither advantage nor danger. Jellyfish do not rely on camouflage or display. Their presence is quiet, almost incidental, shaped by the same forces that shape the currents around them. They are part of the movement rather than separate from it. This absence of urgency defines their role in the Arctic ecosystem. Jellyfish persist through seasons that force others into retreat, remaining active when speed and strength would fail. Their calm drift contributes to the steady exchange of energy, linking small prey to larger predators that pass through these waters. Even here, influence does not require aggression. In near freezing darkness, jellyfish embody a different solution to survival. Their softness absorbs cold rather than fighting it. Their slow movement preserves energy rather than spending it. Life continues at a measured pace, carried forward by patience and balance, showing that in the Arctic, endurance often belongs to those who move the least. Beneath the Arctic ice, where light fades into suggestion, sight loses its authority, shapes blur, colors dissolve, and distance becomes uncertain. In this softened world, many creatures shift their attention away from vision and towards something closer and more immediate. Touch becomes the primary sense, not limited to skin alone, but extended through water, pressure, and subtle movement. Bodies here are tuned to feel rather than to see. Fine hairs, sensitive membranes, and elongated appendages extend outward, sampling the surrounding space continuously. These structures respond to faint vibrations and gentle shifts in current, registering the passing of another body long before it would ever come into view. Information arrives as motion rather than image, translated into direction, size, and intent through patterns of disturbance. Water carries these signals faithfully. Even small movements send ripples that spread outward, bending softly around ice, rock, and living forms. Creatures that depend on touch learn to read these ripples with precision. A drifting particle feels different from a swimming animal. A steady current differs from a sudden displacement. Over time, these distinctions become as clear as outlines once were in brighter worlds. This mode of sensing offers stability. Light beneath the ice changes with seasons, snow cover, and thickness, but the movement of water remains consistent. Touch does not fade with darkness. It does not require clarity or contrast. It simply requires presence. By listening with their bodies, these animals gain access to reliable information in an environment where vision often fails. Movement adjusts accordingly. Many creatures glide slowly, minimizing turbulence, that might confuse incoming signals. Stillness becomes a way of listening more clearly. When motion does occur, it is deliberate and measured, designed to create interpretable patterns rather than chaotic noise. Interaction unfolds quietly, guided by proximity and pressure instead of visual recognition. Feeding and avoidance follow the same principles. Prey is detected by the faint disturbances it creates, predators by the weight of their passage through the water. Reaction times may be slower, but accuracy remains high. There is no need to identify form when motion reveals enough. The world is understood through contact and consequence, not appearance. This reliance on touch reshapes the way space is experienced. Distance shrinks to what can be felt. Awareness becomes local and continuous, grounded in the present moment. Memory and instinct fill in what sight once provided, building a sense of place from repeated encounters and familiar patterns of movement. The environment becomes known through repetition rather than observation. Within this sensory framework, the Arctic beneath the ice remains navigable and rich. Life does not disappear with the light, it changes how it knows. Touch offers a quiet, dependable language, one spoken through water and pressure, always present, always current. In this way, creatures persist, moving through darkness with confidence, born not of vision, but of connection to the world immediately around them. Along the cold floor beneath Arctic ice, where light never fully arrives, amphipods move through a steady snowfall of organic remains. Bits of life drift downward from above, fragments of algae, discarded molts, and the remains of creatures that have completed their cycles. What reaches the bottom is not waste, but opportunity. Amphipods gather here, small and adaptable, turning what falls into something useful again. Their role is quiet but constant. As scavengers, amphipods prevent accumulation, breaking down organic debris before it can smother the seafloor or lock nutrients away. They arrive quickly when material settles, their bodies designed to navigate uneven terrain and narrow spaces. With jointed limbs and flexible forms, they crawl, cling, and burrow, reaching food that larger animals cannot access. In doing so, they keep energy moving rather than letting it stagnate. Life here unfolds slowly, guided by gravity more than urgency. Organic matter descends at irregular intervals, sometimes in sparse traces, sometimes in brief abundance following seasonal pulses above. Amphipods adapt to this unpredictability by eating broadly. They consume whatever arrives, living or dead, fresh or decomposing. This flexibility allows survival without specialization, an advantage in a place where consistency is rare. As they feed, amphipods fragment larger pieces into smaller ones, increasing surface area and speeding decomposition. Bacteria follow, further recycling material into forms that can re-enter the broader system. Nutrients released in this process do not vanish. They diffuse back into sediments and water, eventually supporting new growth elsewhere. The amphipods serve as intermediaries, connecting decay to renewal through their everyday movements. Cold shapes their existence without overwhelming it. Their metabolism remains modest, suited to long waits between meals. Growth is slow, reproduction measured, and lifespans often extended. When food becomes scarce, activity decreases rather than stops entirely. Amphipods persist through conservation, adjusting pace instead of pushing beyond limits. This restraint allows them to endure long periods when little reaches the seafloor. Predation exists but does not dominate. Many amphipods live tucked into crevices, beneath debris, or within soft sediments, avoiding open exposure. Their small size and muted presence reduce attention, while their numbers ensure continuity even when individuals are lost. Survival here is not about avoidance alone, but about being replaceable without disruption. Through their collective work, amphipods stabilize the frozen ocean's foundation. Without them, organic matter would accumulate unevenly, oxygen levels could shift, and nutrient cycles would slow. Their activity maintains balance quietly, smoothing extremes and supporting life that depends on steady conditions. They do not shape the Arctic through force, but through persistence. In the darkness beneath the ice, amphipods embody flexibility as a way of life. They accept what arrives, adapt to what changes, and continue moving through a landscape defined by cold and time. By cleaning the frozen ocean floor piece by piece, they ensure that nothing is truly wasted, allowing the Arctic's slow system to remain connected, functional, and alive. In the cold beneath Arctic ice, pursuit rarely defines success. Energy is limited, visibility uncertain, and food appears without warning. For predators living here, survival favors restraint over speed. Instead of chasing prey through dark water, many hunters rely on patience, positioning themselves within familiar pathways and waiting for movement to come close enough to matter. These predators understand the cost of motion. Rapid swimming increases heat loss, accelerates metabolism, and spends precious reserves that cannot easily be replaced. A failed chase carries consequences that last far longer than the moment itself. As a result, hunting strategies evolve toward stillness. Bodies settle into places where prey is likely to pass, near ice edges, along gentle currents, or above seafloor contours that guide drifting life. Presence becomes preparation. Waiting sharpens efficiency. Muscles remain relaxed until needed, conserving energy for a single, decisive action rather than a prolonged effort. Sensory systems stay alert, tuned to subtle vibrations and pressure changes that signal approach. When the moment arrives, movement is brief and precise. A sudden lunge, a quick turn, or a short burst of speed replaces extended pursuit. The outcome depends on timing rather than endurance. Speed offers little advantage here. In near darkness, chasing increases uncertainty as much as opportunity. Prey can vanish into shadow, scatter unpredictably, or slip into spaces inaccessible to larger bodies. Cold water also resists rapid motion, making acceleration costly and deceleration unavoidable. Predators that rely on velocity alone find diminishing returns. Those that wait conserve energy while maintaining equal access to food. This approach shapes behavior across the food web. Predators often return to the same locations repeatedly, building familiarity with their surroundings. Ice formations, currents, and topography become allies, narrowing the range of possible movement and increasing encounter likelihood. The environment itself assists the hunt, reducing the need for constant searching. Even feeding patterns align with this strategy. Many predators eat infrequently, consuming substantial meals when opportunity arises, then resting for long periods as digestion unfolds slowly. This rhythm matches the Arctic's pace, where abundance appears in pulses rather than streams. Waiting allows hunters to match effort to reward without imbalance. This style of predation alters the emotional texture of the environment. There is no frantic motion, no visible conflict carried across long distances. Encounters happen quietly, often without warning, and end just as quickly. The stillness returns immediately after, as if nothing occurred. Life continues without spectacle. Over time, these behaviors reinforce stability. Predators that hunt efficiently place less strain on the system, removing prey without exhausting themselves or disrupting broader patterns. Their presence remains steady rather than overwhelming, allowing prey populations to recover between encounters. Balance emerges not from dominance, but from restraint. In the Arctic beneath the ice, hunting becomes an exercise in alignment rather than opposition. Waiting replaces chasing. Precision replaces speed. Predators succeed by understanding when not to move, trusting that stillness, patience, and familiarity with place provide everything needed to survive in a world that rewards calm over urgency. Far below the Arctic ice, where darkness settles permanently, the seafloor receives what the upper world releases. Food does not arrive here in abundance or regularity. It drifts downward slowly, a quiet rain made of fragments shaped by earlier processes far above. Particles loosen from ice, remains sink from passing lives, and seasonal pulses send brief cascades toward the depths. By the time nourishment reaches the bottom, it has been softened by distance and time. This descent reshapes food into something measured rather than plentiful. Larger pieces break apart as they fall, spreading outward and thinning as they descend. Currents guide them gently, never hurried, allowing material to settle across wide areas instead of accumulating in one place. What reaches the seafloor arrives evenly but sparingly, demanding patience from those who depend on it. Life here responds with calm persistence. Benthic communities move slowly, shaped by limited energy and cold stability. Creatures rest against sediment, rocks, and long settled debris, their movements deliberate and economical. Limbs are used sparingly, burrowing happens gradually. Growth unfolds over extended spans rather than seasons. The seafloor does not reward speed, it rewards endurance. Each organism plays a quiet role within this layered stillness. Some filter fine particles from the water just above the sediment. Others graze gently across surfaces, collecting what has settled. Predation occurs, but without urgency. Encounters are infrequent, and meals are often spread across long intervals. Nothing here depends on rapid consumption or constant activity. Energy is guarded carefully, spent only when necessary. Cold enhances this rhythm. Chemical reactions proceed slowly, decay takes time, and biological processes stretch outward rather than collapsing. This slowness preserves resources. Organic matter remains usable longer, giving communities time to access what would disappear quickly elsewhere. The environment supports continuity not by producing more, but by allowing what exists to last. Persistence defines this world. Many benthic creatures live long lives marked by minimal change. Their bodies reflect this commitment to stability, with structures built to last and metabolisms tuned for scarcity. Reproduction occurs cautiously, often aligned with brief increases in food supply that ripple down from above. Even then, growth remains restrained, ensuring balance is maintained. The seafloor beneath the ice functions as a memory of everything that happens above it. Each drifting particle carries a record of light, movement, and life from higher layers. These records settle into sediments, are processed slowly, and are returned to the system in altered forms. Nothing is wasted. Time smooths everything into usability. In this darkness, productivity matters less than persistence. The Arctic seafloor does not surge or collapse. It continues through long winters and short summers, beneath ice that rarely notices it. Life endures by waiting, conserving, and accepting the slow arrival of what is needed. The foundation holds steady, supporting the entire frozen ocean through quiet, patient balance. On the Arctic seafloor, brittle stars spread across the sediment like quiet geometry, their slender arms reaching outward in patient symmetry. Star-shaped bodies suit this environment in subtle ways. Each arm functions with a degree of independence, allowing movement, feeding, and response without demanding coordination that would cost energy. In a place where conservation matters more than speed, this distributed design offers resilience built into form. Cold does not hurry these animals, and they do not resist it. Brittle stars tolerate near freezing temperatures by keeping their processes simple and deliberate. They move slowly across the bottom, arms lifting and settling with measured intent, using gentle currents to bring food within reach. Particles drifting down from above are collected without pursuit, guided toward the central body where digestion proceeds at an unforced pace. Nothing is rushed, nothing is wasted. Their true advantage appears when damage occurs. Life beneath the ice is not free from disturbance. Predators pass through, ice shifts, debris settles unevenly. When an arm is lost, it is not a crisis. The body remains functional, continuing to feed and move while regeneration begins quietly at the broken edge. New tissue forms gradually, shaped by the same restrained chemistry that governs all Arctic life. Growth is slow, but it is reliable. Regeneration in this environment does not depend on abundance. It relies on patience. Cells divide at a reduced pace, using minimal energy while restoring structure over long stretches of time. The cold slows every reaction, yet it also reduces decay, allowing new growth to proceed without competition from rapid breakdown. Repair becomes sustainable because nothing else demands immediate attention. This capacity reshapes survival. Brittle stars do not need to defend every limb aggressively. Loss becomes part of endurance rather than failure. Arms sacrificed to escape predation or disturbance can be replaced when conditions allow. This flexibility reduces the need for constant vigilance and allows brittle stars to inhabit exposed areas that might otherwise be too risky. Resilience replaces avoidance. Longevity follows naturally. Many brittle stars live long lives marked by gradual change rather than dramatic events. Energy expenditure remains low, growth incremental, and reproduction measured. When food is scarce, they reduce activity without withdrawing entirely. When resources improve, they respond modestly, never exceeding what can be maintained. The balance holds across years rather than seasons. Their star-shaped form also maximizes contact with the environment. Arms extend into passing currents, increasing the chance of capturing drifting nourishment. At the same time, their low profile keeps them close to the seafloor, where conditions remain stable. This positioning minimizes exposure to turbulence and sudden change, anchoring life in predictability. Through all of this, brittle stars exemplify survival without excess. Regeneration does not restore speed or strength. It restores continuity. In the cold darkness beneath Arctic ice, these animals persist by accepting damage, repairing slowly, and continuing onward without interruption. Their quiet presence reflects a system where success is measured not by dominance, but by the ability to remain, adapt, and endure with minimal demand on a limited world. Beneath the Arctic ice, some creatures exist in a state that borders on stillness. They are not asleep, yet they are rarely active in any visible way. Their lives unfold at a pace so slow, it feels detached from time above, shaped by cold, darkness, and a world where motion is costly. Here, survival does not favor alertness or speed, but the ability to remain without change. Near dormancy becomes a way of life. Bodies lower their demands until the bare minimum remains. Metabolism slows to a quiet hum, heartbeats stretch apart, and internal processes continue with deliberate restraint. Energy is conserved not as preparation for sudden action, but as a means of continuation. These animals do not wait for opportunity, they wait for time to pass. Movement, when it occurs, is sparse and purposeful. A slight shift in position, a gentle adjustment to current or sediment, may be all that happens in long intervals. Muscles remain relaxed, avoiding unnecessary contractions that would increase energy use. In an environment where food drifts unpredictably and cold amplifies every cost, stillness becomes a form of precision. The surrounding world reinforces this strategy. Beneath the ice, conditions remain stable for extended periods. Temperatures fluctuate little, light is absent for months, and the rhythm of change is slow. Creatures attuned to this stability find no advantage in constant activity. Instead, they match the environment's patience, allowing external forces to shape their days rather than imposing their own urgency. Feeding aligns with this rhythm. Some animals consume only when nourishment comes within immediate reach, relying on minimal effort to secure sustenance. Others absorb nutrients slowly from sediments or water, taking in what is available without pursuit. Digestion unfolds over long spans, extracting maximum value from even the smallest intake. There is no abundance here, only sufficiency stretched across time. Life, measured in years rather than moments, leads naturally to longevity. Many of these still creatures live far longer than expected for their size. Growth proceeds gradually. Repairs are made carefully, and wear accumulates slowly. Cold reduces damage as much as it reduces activity, preserving tissues and limiting decay. Survival becomes cumulative, built from countless uneventful days rather than dramatic escapes. This lifestyle changes perception of existence itself. Time loses its urgency. Seasons pass without clear boundaries, marked only by subtle shifts in chemistry or the faint arrival of new material from above. These animals do not respond to the world moment by moment. They persist through it, embedded in its slow progression. In this quiet persistence, stillness is not absence, it is presence held gently. Beneath the Arctic ice, life proves that motion is optional, patience essential, and continuity possible without display. These creatures endure by asking almost nothing of their environment, allowing years to carry them forward, one careful, nearly motionless moment at a time. In the cold beneath Arctic ice, where sunlight fades into memory, some of the most persistent lives are the smallest. Microbes continue their work in temperatures that slow nearly everything else, sustaining activity near the lower limits of chemical possibility. They do not rely on light or warmth. Instead, they survive through reactions so subtle they unfold almost unnoticed, molecule by molecule, sustained by patience and precision. These organisms draw energy from chemistry rather than sunbeams. Dissolved compounds drifting through water and sediment become fuel, rearranged through carefully balanced reactions that release just enough energy to continue. Oxygen, sulfur, nitrogen, and carbon cycle quietly through microbial pathways, transformed without urgency. The cold slows each step, yet it also stabilizes conditions, allowing processes to persist without interruption. Time stretches and chemistry adapts. Bacteria operate here as unseen engineers, shaping the Arctic ecosystem from its foundations. They break down organic matter that settles from above, preventing nutrients from becoming trapped in unusable forms. Through their activity, elements are recycled back into the system, made available to other life that depends on these invisible conversions. Without microbes, the slow rain of material from higher layers would accumulate without purpose, locking energy away instead of returning it to circulation. Their presence is not dramatic. Microbial communities spread thinly across sediments, coat particles suspended in water, and occupy microscopic spaces within ice and rock. They form networks of interaction rather than visible structures. Each cell functions independently, yet together they sustain large-scale balance. Their cumulative influence outweighs their size, guiding the chemistry of entire regions without drawing attention to themselves. Near freezing conditions demand efficiency. Enzymes within these microbes are shaped to function at low temperatures, flexible enough to facilitate reactions when thermal energy is scarce. Chemical bonds form and break slowly, but reliably. Reactions are not forced. They proceed along pathways that favor consistency over speed, ensuring that even minimal energy yields continuation. Life here exists at the edge of reaction limits, but it does not cross them. Sunlight is unnecessary for this persistence. Darkness does not signal dormancy. Microbial activity continues through polar night, sustained by gradients that remain long after light disappears. As long as chemical differences exist, energy can be extracted. This allows life to persist independently of surface cycles, maintaining a quiet constancy beneath the ice. These microbes also influence the physical environment. Their activity alters sediment structure, affects gas concentrations, and shapes the chemistry of surrounding water. Over time, these changes ripple outward, influencing habitats far beyond the scale of a single cell. The Arctic system remains functional in part because these microscopic processes never fully pause. In this hidden realm, life does not announce itself through movement or form. It continues through reaction and balance, sustaining the frozen ocean with steady, invisible labor. Microbes demonstrate that survival does not always depend on light or motion. At the edge of what chemistry allows, they persist, carrying life forward through cold darkness by working quietly, endlessly, and without recognition. Beneath the Arctic ice, life depends not on strength or speed, but on chemistry tuned to cold. At temperatures that would silence most biological processes, reactions continue with careful restraint. The secret lies in enzymes shaped for this environment, molecular tools adjusted to work where energy is scarce and motion is slow. They do not force reactions forward. They guide them gently, allowing life to persist at the edge of inactivity. In warmer places, enzymes rely on heat to increase molecular motion, bringing reactants together through frequent collisions. Cold strips away that advantage. In response, Arctic organisms produce enzymes that remain flexible even when temperatures hover near freezing. Their structures are looser, more responsive, allowing reactions to proceed without the push of warmth. Bonds form and break with precision, each step measured rather than rushed. This flexibility comes with limits. Cold, adapted enzymes are efficient only within a narrow range. Outside of it, they lose stability. Yet, within the Arctic, stability is exactly what the environment provides. Temperature changes are gradual, predictable, and restrained by ice and water. Life adjusts to this consistency, refining chemistry for reliability rather than strength. The result is a system that does not accelerate, but endures. Reactions here slow dramatically, but they do not stop. Metabolic pathways stretch across time, unfolding over hours or days instead of seconds. Energy production continues in small increments, sufficient to maintain cellular structure, repair damage, and support minimal activity. Nothing is wasted. Excess heat is not generated. Every reaction serves a clear purpose, contributing to balance rather than growth. This approach favors precision over power. Arctic life does not overwhelm obstacles through forceful chemistry. It avoids them through accuracy. Enzymes bind specifically to their targets, reducing errors that would be costly to repair. By minimizing mistakes, organisms conserve energy and extend survival. Accuracy replaces intensity as the dominant strategy. The surrounding environment reinforces this chemistry. Cold reduces random degradation, preserving molecules longer than they would last elsewhere. Proteins denature slowly, lipids remain intact. Chemical gradients persist, providing gentle but reliable sources of energy. The Arctic becomes a place where reactions can proceed quietly without being disrupted by sudden changes. This steady chemistry supports every layer of life beneath the ice. Microbes recycle elements through careful reactions. Invertebrates maintain function with low metabolic demand. Fish sustain circulation and movement without overheating or freezing. Each organism relies on the same principle, working within the limits of cold rather than against them. Over time, this chemistry shapes behavior and form. Growth slows, lifespans lengthen, and reproduction aligns with narrow windows of opportunity. Life becomes calibrated to persistence. The environment does not reward speed or excess. It rewards systems that remain balanced under constraint. In the Arctic, chemistry becomes a language of survival spoken softly but continuously. Reactions proceed with patience, guided by enzymes designed for subtlety. Power fades into the background. Precision takes its place, keeping life active beneath the ice, moment by moment, without ever needing to hurry. Beneath the Arctic ice, sound becomes the most reliable guide. Light fades quickly, movement is muted by cold water, and vision reaches only a short distance before dissolving. Sound, however, travels with patience and clarity, shaped by ice above and dense water below. The frozen ceiling reflects vibrations back downward, while cold water carries them farther than warm seas ever could. What begins as a small disturbance spreads outward in layered echoes, filling the darkness with information. Ice changes how sound behaves. Its solid surface acts as a boundary, bending and trapping waves rather than letting them scatter upward. At the same time, stable temperatures beneath the ice reduce turbulence, allowing sound to move smoothly across long distances. Low-frequency vibrations travel especially well, stretching through water with little loss. Even subtle motions leave traces that linger, suspended briefly before fading into stillness. Animals living here are shaped by this consistency. Many do not rely on sharp hearing in the familiar sense, but on sensitivity to pressure changes carried through their bodies. Specialized organs detect vibrations passing through water and tissue, translating movement into awareness. A shifting current, the slow approach of another body, or the scrape of ice above sends signals that can be read without sight. Listening becomes an active process. Stillness sharpens perception, allowing faint signals to stand out against the quiet background. Movement is often minimized, so incoming sounds remain clear. The environment rewards restraint, since unnecessary motion creates noise that interferes with detection. In this way, silence becomes a tool rather than absence. For predators, sound outlines opportunity. The faint displacement of water created by prey can be detected long before contact is possible. The rhythm of movement reveals size and direction, allowing a response that is precise rather than rushed. For prey, sound offers warning. The distant passage of a larger body arrives as pressure first, giving time to settle deeper into shelter or remain motionless until danger passes. Sound also carries information beyond immediate interaction. Ice shifting under pressure sends groans through the water. Currents interacting with seafloor structures generate low, steady tones. These background signals create a familiar acoustic landscape, allowing animals to recognize changes that suggest disturbance or stability. The world beneath the ice becomes known through layers of sound rather than visual landmarks. This reliance shapes communication as well. Some animals produce deliberate vibrations, not to announce presence broadly, but to signal nearby companions or establish spacing without contact. These signals are often simple and restrained, designed to blend with the environment rather than dominate it. Communication here values subtlety over volume, listening as survival aligns naturally with the Arctic's pace. Sound does not demand speed, it allows anticipation without urgency, awareness without movement. Life beneath the ice depends on understanding what cannot be seen, and sound provides that understanding patiently. In this dark, cold space, the frozen ceiling turns the ocean into a chamber of quiet resonance. Every movement leaves an echo, every presence announces itself gently. By listening carefully, Arctic creatures remain connected to a world that reveals itself not through light or motion, but through vibration carried calmly through the water. Beneath the Arctic ice, seals move through a space divided between two necessities that rarely meet. Water provides food, shelter, and continuity. Air offers life itself. Survival depends on maintaining access to both, navigating a ceiling that separates them with unforgiving clarity. Seals do not challenge this boundary. They learn it, memorize it, and move within it with careful timing. Breathing holes become anchors in an otherwise sealed world. Some are maintained through constant use, kept open by repeated surfacing that prevents freezing. Others are found and revisited, remembered across seasons as the ice shifts slowly above. These openings are not conveniences, they are lifelines. Every dive, every hunt beneath the ice is shaped around their presence. Distance matters, direction matters, memory matters. Below the surface, seals hunt in darkness guided by sound, pressure, and familiarity rather than sight. Fish and invertebrates move quietly through shadowed corridors beneath the ice, and seals follow their patterns rather than pursue them blindly. Energy is conserved through patience. A seal may drift motionless for long moments, sensing subtle movement before acting. When a strike comes, it is brief and efficient, aligned with the same energy-saving principles that govern the rest of the Arctic system. The balance between air and water shapes seal behavior completely. Dives are calculated, not dramatic. Oxygen is used steadily, circulation adjusted to favor the brain and heart, while other processes slow. Time underwater stretches as the body conserves resources, allowing seals to hunt without urgency. Still, limits remain. The return to air is inevitable, and every decision underwater carries awareness of distance and duration. This dependence ties survival to timing more than strength. Seals must arrive at breathing holes before ice thickens beyond use. They must hunt efficiently enough to avoid unnecessary returns to the surface, yet not so long that oxygen runs thin. Seasonal changes influence these rhythms subtly. As ice thickens or thins, access points shift, requiring constant adaptation. The hidden life beneath the ice sustains this balance. Fish supported by earlier processes move within reach, allowing seals to meet their needs without exhaustive travel. In turn, seals become part of the energy flow, transferring nourishment upward to predators above the ice. Their movements connect layers that would otherwise remain isolated. Rest occurs at the boundary. Seals haul out beside openings, bodies exposed briefly to cold air while remaining close to water. This edge becomes a place of recovery, where breathing returns to its normal rhythm and warmth is preserved through insulation and stillness. Even here, nothing is wasted. Movement remains minimal, time remains slow. In this frozen world, seals do not dominate their environment, they negotiate with it. Their survival depends on quiet knowledge of hidden systems, on patience learned over generations, and on precise timing that aligns breath, movement, and food. Beneath the ice, life continues through balance rather than force, carried forward by animals that understand exactly when to wait and when to rise. Above the Arctic ice, polar bears move through a landscape that appears simple and silent. Snow stretches outward, wind shapes drifts, and the surface seems detached from the life hidden below. Yet every step a polar bear takes is supported by an unseen system beneath the ice, a layered network of activity that begins far below the frozen ceiling and rises slowly upward. The bear does not feed on this hidden life directly. It hunts seals, waiting patiently beside breathing holes where water meets air. But the seals themselves exist only because of what happens deeper down. Fish, sustained by drifting nutrients, move beneath the ice. Those fish depend on smaller creatures, which in turn rely on microscopic processes embedded in ice and water. Energy travels upward through many quiet exchanges before it ever reaches the surface. This indirect chain shapes polar bear survival. When under ice life remains steady, seals find food reliably and maintain healthy populations. In response, polar bears are able to hunt without constant movement, conserving energy in a world where every step carries cost. The bear's strength and size may dominate the surface, but its survival rests on processes it will never encounter. These connections unfold slowly. Algae grow within ice, small animals convert that growth into mobile energy, and fish gather where conditions allow. Seals follow those fish, guided by sound and memory beneath the ice. Only then does the polar bear enter the story, emerging as the visible presence at the end of a long sequence. Each layer depends on the stability of the one below it. This relationship is delicate. When changes ripple through the under ice world, they do not announce themselves immediately above. A slight shift in timing, a reduction in microscopic productivity, or altered movement beneath the ice can take seasons to become visible. By the time effects reach the surface, they arrive quietly, expressed through thinner seals, longer waits, and greater distances between successful hunts. Polar bears adapt through patience rather than speed. They wait, remaining still for hours beside openings in the ice, relying on the predictability of seal behavior shaped by deeper systems. This stillness mirrors the Arctic itself, where survival depends on alignment with slow rhythms instead of constant action. The fragility of this arrangement lies in its subtlety. Because polar bears are removed from the foundations of their food web, they cannot respond directly to changes there. Their fate becomes tied to processes beyond their reach, hidden beneath layers of ice and water. Strength offers no protection from imbalance. Awareness comes only after consequences surface. In this way, polar bears stand as visible symbols of an invisible world. Their presence reflects the health of a system few ever see, one built on countless quiet interactions beneath the ice. Survival here is not a matter of dominance, but of connection. The Arctic endures through these indirect ties, reminding us that even its most powerful inhabitants depend entirely on what lives quietly below. In the Arctic beneath the ice, life unfolds along a stretched timeline. Many species here live far longer than their size or simplicity would suggest, not through resilience alone, but through restraint built into every process. Growth proceeds slowly, shaped by cold water, limited food, and an environment that rewards consistency rather than expansion. Time becomes less a measure of urgency and more a steady companion. Slow growth lies at the heart of this longevity. Cells divide cautiously, tissues develop over extended periods, and bodies rarely rush toward maturity. Energy that might be spent on rapid growth elsewhere is instead conserved, allocated carefully to maintenance and repair. This pacing reduces internal stress and limits the accumulation of damage. In cold conditions, chemical reactions proceed gently, lowering wear on biological systems and allowing organisms to persist with minimal decline. Many Arctic creatures mature late and reproduce infrequently, investing in survival rather than output. Reproduction is aligned with brief windows of suitability, ensuring that when offspring appear, conditions allow at least a narrow chance of continuation. Between these moments, life remains focused on staying intact. Longevity becomes an emergent property of patience rather than a direct adaptation. Aging without abundance reshapes the experience of time. Food does not arrive in constant supply, so bodies learn to function on less. Metabolism remains low, reducing oxidative stress and slowing cellular aging. Repair mechanisms operate continuously but at an unhurried pace, addressing damage before it compounds. Cold water further stabilizes tissues, slowing processes that lead to decay. This environment also limits extremes. Without dramatic temperature swings or rapid environmental shifts, organisms avoid the repeated shocks that shorten lifespans elsewhere. Change arrives gradually, allowing adjustment without crisis. Stability supports endurance, turning years into usable spans rather than obstacles. Long lives alter behavior as well as physiology. There is little need for haste when survival is measured in decades rather than seasons. Many Arctic species move little, feed opportunistically, and remain within familiar spaces for extended periods. Experience accumulates slowly, reinforcing behaviors that conserve energy and reduce risk. Avoidance replaces confrontation. Familiarity replaces exploration. Predation and disturbance still occur, but longevity shifts their impact. Loss is absorbed across time. Populations remain steady through replacement rather than rebound, and ecosystems maintain balance without dramatic cycles. Long-lived species anchor these systems, providing continuity that supports slower processes above and below them. In this slow world, aging does not resemble decline driven by excess. It reflects gradual change guided by restraint. Bodies wear gently, systems adjust calmly. Life does not stretch itself thin, seeking more than the environment can provide. Instead, it aligns with limits and extends itself across them. Beneath the Arctic ice, long life is not a triumph over hardship, it is a quiet agreement with it. By growing slowly and aging carefully, these species transform scarcity into stability, proving that in a world without abundance, time itself can become the greatest resource. Reaching the world beneath Arctic ice requires patience, planning, and an acceptance of limits. Scientists do not arrive here easily or often. Access begins on the surface, where temporary ice camps are established on drifting platforms that never fully settle. These camps exist briefly, assembled with care, and removed before the ice shifts again. Everything brought onto the ice must be justified, minimized, and adapted to cold that affects both machines and people. From these camps, researchers open narrow passages through ice that can stretch several meters thick. Drilling is deliberate and slow, designed to preserve the fragile boundary between frozen surface and liquid world below. Each borehole becomes a temporary window, a direct connection to a hidden environment that closes as soon as the work ends. Water rises silently through the opening, carrying cold air downward and warmth upward, reminding researchers that the boundary they crossed is always unstable. Once access is secured, instruments are lowered carefully. Sensors descend into darkness to measure temperature, chemistry, and movement. Sampling devices collect water and sediment with minimal disturbance. Time below is limited. Holes refreeze. Equipment must be retrieved before ice reclaims the opening. Every observation carries urgency, balanced against the need for accuracy. Beneath thicker ice sheets and areas too dangerous for surface camps, underwater robots become the primary explorers. These machines are lowered through drilled openings or deployed from open water at the ice edge, then guided beneath frozen ceilings far beyond human reach. Tethered vehicles send back images and data slowly, their signals traveling through cables rather than air. Untethered robots navigate autonomously, relying on careful programming and limited onboard sensing to avoid becoming lost beneath kilometers of ice. Movement is cautious. Ice overhead blocks direct return to the surface, leaving few escape paths if systems fail. For this reason, exploration remains constrained by risk. Robots move slowly, scan constantly, and return along precise routes. Each mission expands understanding only slightly, mapping fragments of a vast environment that remains largely unseen. Despite these efforts, much of the under-ice world is still unknown. Ice shifts unpredictably, crushing instruments or sealing access points. Darkness limits observation. Cold shortens battery life and affects mechanical reliability. Seasonal windows for research are narrow, and logistical challenges restrict where and how often studies can occur. Even when data is collected, interpreting it requires care, as brief observations may not reflect long-term patterns. The scale of the Arctic further complicates understanding. Conditions vary widely across regions, depths, and seasons. A discovery beneath one ice sheet may not apply elsewhere. Patterns emerge slowly, built from scattered data points gathered across decades rather than years. Knowledge grows by accumulation rather than revelation. This distance between effort and understanding defines Arctic research. Scientists approach cautiously, knowing that complete access is impossible. Each expedition offers only a glimpse, never a full picture. The hidden world beneath the ice reveals itself gradually, allowing just enough insight to confirm its complexity. In this way, exploration mirrors the environment itself. Progress is slow, careful, and restrained. Much remains unseen not because of neglect, but because the Arctic permits only limited contact. The hidden world continues quietly beneath the ice, larger and deeper than what science can yet reach. As Arctic ice thins and retreats, the world beneath becomes briefly visible in ways it has not been for most of human observation. Openings appear where thick ice once sealed the ocean completely, allowing light, instruments, and attention to reach places long hidden. These moments do not arrive dramatically. They unfold quietly, offering glimpses rather than revelations, and each glimpse carries information shaped by change itself. With thinner ice, scientists are able to observe patterns that were previously inferred rather than seen. Light penetrates deeper earlier in the year, altering the timing of biological activity. Water exchanges more freely with the atmosphere, shifting temperature and chemistry in subtle ways. These adjustments reveal how closely life beneath the ice is tuned to conditions that were once stable. Processes that operated quietly now become detectable as their rhythms shift. Species once concealed by permanent or long-lasting ice appear with greater frequency. Some are encountered for the first time in accessible waters, no longer restricted to narrow, hidden corridors. Others expand into areas where observation was once impossible. Their presence does not signal sudden arrival, but recognition. These organisms were already there, living out their cycles beyond reach. Thinning ice allows awareness to catch up with reality. This exposure reshapes understanding. Behaviors once assumed to be rare prove to be common. Interactions previously imagined in isolation are seen as connected. Life beneath the ice shows flexibility and responsiveness, adjusting distribution and activity as conditions change. These responses demonstrate how Arctic ecosystems function not as static systems, but as living networks capable of gradual adjustment within limits. At the same time, change introduces imbalance. Some species struggle to adapt to altered timing and increased variability. Life histories shaped by predictable cold and darkness encounter conditions that shift more quickly than before. The same openings that allow observation also bring disruption, altering long established patterns. What becomes visible is not only resilience, but vulnerability. Ice loss teaches through contrast. By revealing what existed unseen, it highlights how much depended on concealment and stability. The Arctic beneath the ice was not inactive or sparse. It was structured, balanced, and deeply adapted to consistent conditions. When those conditions change, the responses expose relationships that were once protected by isolation. Understanding grows not from spectacle, but from comparison. Past assumptions meet present observation, and differences carry meaning. Scientists learn which processes remain steady and which respond quickly. Each exposed region becomes a lesson in how life organizes itself when boundaries shift, offering insight into endurance as well as fragility. These revelations do not arrive as conclusions, they arrive as context. Ice loss does not simply uncover new species or behaviors, it reframes what was already there, reminding us that absence of observation never meant absence of life. The hidden world beneath the ice continues to operate, now partially visible, carrying forward systems shaped by cold, patience, and time. In this unfolding visibility, change becomes a teacher rather than a declaration. It shows how tightly life is bound to its environment and how quietly complexity persists until conditions allow it to be seen. Some lives beneath the Arctic ice remain known only through brief encounters and partial traces. A single specimen brought up through a drilling hole, a fleeting image captured by a distant camera before darkness returns, a chemical signature in water that suggests activity without revealing form. These fragments hint at diversity that science has only begun to outline, leaving entire lineages defined by absence rather than understanding. Limited data shapes everything here. Ice restricts access, seasons narrow opportunities, and conditions rarely allow prolonged observation. Many species are encountered once, then not again for years or decades. Patterns cannot be confirmed. Behaviors remain inferred. Life cycles are guessed at rather than followed. Knowledge accumulates slowly, often unevenly, built from rare moments separated by long silences. Inaccessibility carries a quiet cost. When environments cannot be revisited easily, change may occur without being noticed. A population may decline between expeditions. A species may shift its range beyond familiar sites. Some may vanish entirely before names are assigned or roles understood. Absence becomes the first sign of loss, but without baseline knowledge, absence is difficult to measure. These unknown lives are often the most specialized, shaped to fit narrow conditions beneath ice that once remained stable for centuries. Their adaptations favor constancy and predictability. When that stability weakens, they may have little room to adjust. Changes that seem subtle at the surface can carry disproportionate consequences below, altering chemistry, timing, or structure enough to push fragile systems beyond tolerance. The disappearance of such species rarely announces itself. There are no visible die-offs, no dramatic shifts in color or sound. Loss happens quietly, woven into the background of an environment already distant from human perception. What fades may leave only a gap in data sets or an unanswered reference in a research paper. The system adjusts, but something specific is gone. This silence challenges how loss is understood. Extinction is often imagined as sudden and visible. Here, it is gradual and uncertain, hidden behind ice and depth. Without frequent observation, the line between rarity and disappearance blurs. Science becomes aware only after the fact, reconstructing what might have been from limited records. Yet, even within this uncertainty, recognition matters. Acknowledging that much remains unknown reshapes priorities. It emphasizes caution in interpretation and humility in assumption. Every observation becomes valuable, not just for what it reveals, but for what it implies about unseen complexity. The Arctic beneath the ice is not empty between discoveries. It is full of processes that continue regardless of attention. Species may be lost before they are fully understood, but their existence still matters. They contribute to balance, to chemistry, to relationships that support visible life above. Their quiet disappearance alters systems, even if the change cannot be traced to a single cause. In this hidden world, absence is not emptiness. It is the echo of lives that once fit precisely into cold, darkness, and time. Understanding arrives slowly here, and sometimes too late, reminding us that knowledge is not guaranteed by presence, and that some lives pass beyond reach before their stories are ever told. Beneath the Arctic ice, processes unfold that reach far beyond the frozen ocean itself. Though distant and quiet, life here participates in cycles that influence the entire planet. Carbon moves through this hidden system steadily, shaped by organisms adapted to cold, darkness, and patience. What happens beneath the ice does not stay there. It becomes part of Earth's broader balance. Carbon enters the Arctic system subtly. Microscopic life converts dissolved carbon into organic matter within ice and water. This material moves slowly through food webs, passing from one organism to another with minimal loss. When particles sink, they carry carbon downward, away from the atmosphere and into deeper layers of the ocean. Cold temperatures slow decomposition, allowing carbon to remain stored longer than it would in warmer regions. This quiet sequestration matters. By holding carbon in deep water and sediments, Arctic ecosystems reduce the amount that returns quickly to the air. The process is not dramatic or fast, but it is steady. Year after year, small amounts accumulate, contributing to long-term regulation of atmospheric carbon levels. The Arctic does not act alone, yet its role is distinct because of how efficiently cold preserves what enters the system. Ocean connections extend this influence outward. Currents beneath the ice link polar waters to the rest of the world's oceans. Water masses formed in the Arctic sink and travel southward, carrying dissolved carbon and nutrients with them. These slow-moving flows help drive global circulation, redistributing heat, chemistry, and life-supporting elements across vast distances. The Arctic becomes a starting point for processes that unfold far from ice. Nutrients shaped beneath the ice eventually resurface elsewhere, supporting productivity in distant seas. In this way, Arctic life contributes indirectly to ecosystems thousands of kilometers away. The timing and composition of these contributions matter, shaped by conditions at the top of the world that determine what enters circulation and when. Subtle shifts in the Arctic ripple outward, influencing patterns that appear disconnected on the surface. This influence remains largely invisible. There are no clear markers linking a distant bloom or temperature pattern back to Arctic processes. Yet the connections persist, built into the physics of the ocean and the chemistry of life. The Arctic's contribution lies not in scale, but in placement. Positioned where water is transformed and redistributed, even small biological processes gain significance. The quiet nature of this influence mirrors the environment itself. Life beneath the ice does not expand aggressively or produce sudden surges. It works through balance, conservation, and gradual exchange. Carbon cycling here favors storage and moderation rather than rapid release. Stability emerges not from abundance, but from consistency. Understanding this planetary role reshapes how the Arctic is perceived. It is not an isolated edge removed from global systems. It is integrated deeply, influencing climate and life far beyond its borders through slow, persistent pathways. Beneath the ice, life continues its careful work, shaping the planet without visibility, reminding us that some of Earth's most important processes happen quietly in places rarely seen. Beneath the Arctic ice, survival follows principles that differ quietly from those often celebrated elsewhere. Here, endurance matters more than dominance. Life persists not by overpowering its surroundings, but by settling into them with careful balance. Creatures do not reshape the environment to suit themselves, they shape themselves to fit what already exists. Energy is treated as something precious and finite. Movement is measured, rarely wasted. Many organisms drift, pause, or rest for long stretches, conserving strength for moments that matter. Instead of chasing constantly, they wait. Instead of growing quickly, they last. Survival becomes an exercise in restraint rather than force. Efficiency replaces speed as the guiding advantage. Fast reactions and rapid growth bring high costs that cold environments rarely forgive. Beneath the ice, slower pathways reduce wear, prevent damage, and allow bodies to function on minimal input. Chemical reactions proceed carefully. Muscles contract only when needed. Systems are tuned to do just enough, never more. This efficiency extends beyond individual bodies into entire food webs. Energy moves through the system with minimal loss. Each transfer is quiet and deliberate. Nothing is produced in excess because excess cannot be supported for long. Waste becomes nourishment elsewhere. Cycles close tightly, reinforcing stability rather than expansion. Life adapting without excess creates forms that may appear fragile, yet endure conditions that defeat more aggressive strategies. Thin shells, soft tissues, and transparent bodies persist, not despite their delicacy, but because of it. By reducing material costs and metabolic demands, these forms align perfectly with their environment. Strength here is subtle, built into chemistry and timing rather than muscle or armor. Reproduction follows the same philosophy. Many species invest slowly and selectively, producing fewer offspring, but supporting them through alignment with brief windows of opportunity. Survival across generations depends less on quantity and more on precision. Timing replaces abundance. Patience replaces competition. Predators, too, reflect these lessons. They rely on stillness, familiarity, and anticipation rather than relentless pursuit. Success comes from understanding patterns and conserving energy between opportunities. Even at the top of the food web, dominance is expressed through restraint. Taken together, these strategies reveal survival as a long conversation with limits. The Arctic does not reward those who take more than necessary. It favors those who match their needs carefully to what is available, year after year. Adaptation here is not dramatic, it is cumulative, shaped by countless small choices that favor balance. These creatures demonstrate that life does not require excess to persist, it requires alignment. By minimizing waste, avoiding urgency, and respecting boundaries, they endure in conditions that seem unwelcoming by other measures. Beneath the ice, survival becomes an art of fitting in rather than standing out. In this slow world, life teaches quietly, endurance outlasts power, efficiency sustains where speed fails. Adaptation succeeds not by demanding more from the environment, but by asking less and remaining present long enough for time itself to become an ally. Frozen environments on Earth offer more than insight into a single region. They provide a framework for understanding where life can persist at all. Scientists study icy worlds not because they are familiar, but because they challenge assumptions about what biology requires. Beneath ice, life exists with little light, scarce energy, and extreme cold, conditions once thought incompatible with long-term survival. These conditions echo far beyond Earth. Icy environments simplify the question of survival. They remove many variables and leave only the essentials. Energy arrives slowly. Chemical reactions proceed carefully. Adaptation favors conservation over growth. By observing how life persists under these constraints, scientists gain a clearer picture of what is truly necessary for living systems to function. The Arctic beneath the ice becomes a natural laboratory shaped by restraint. Earth's extremes reveal strategies that would otherwise remain hidden. Life here relies on chemistry rather than warmth, timing rather than abundance. Cells operate efficiently, enzymes remain flexible, and structures resist damage through simplicity. These traits demonstrate that life does not require ideal conditions. It requires stability within limits. That realization expands the range of environments considered viable beyond Earth. Frozen moons and distant planets share key characteristics with Earth's icy regions. Thick ice layers, subsurface oceans, limited sunlight, and slow energy exchange define many of these worlds. By studying life beneath terrestrial ice, scientists establish analogs, not replicas, but functional comparisons. The behaviors and adaptations observed on Earth provide clues to how life elsewhere might organize itself under similar constraints. These lessons emphasize persistence rather than productivity. Life beneath ice is not defined by rapid growth or visible abundance. It endures quietly, maintaining itself over long periods through efficiency. This endurance suggests that life on other frozen worlds, if it exists, may also be subtle and slow. It may not announce itself with dramatic signals, but with steady chemical traces and gentle movements. Understanding this shifts the focus of exploration. Instead of searching for obvious signs, scientists learn to look for balance, consistency, and small deviations that indicate ongoing processes. Earth's icy ecosystems train observation toward patience. Detection becomes a matter of listening rather than expecting spectacle. Life persisting against odds reframes the concept of habitability. Conditions once labeled hostile begin to appear merely challenging. Cold no longer signals absence. Darkness no longer implies inactivity. Instead, these factors shape unique forms of organization suited to long-term survival. The Arctic teaches that limits can foster stability rather than eliminate possibility. These insights also temper expectation. Even if life exists elsewhere beneath ice, it may remain difficult to find. Like Earth's hidden ecosystems, it may operate beyond easy reach, shaped by environments that allow existence without visibility. Absence of evidence does not equal evidence of absence when life works quietly. By studying frozen worlds on Earth, science expands both knowledge and humility. It learns how adaptable life can be and how carefully conclusions must be drawn. Beneath ice, life demonstrates that persistence does not require comfort. It requires alignment with conditions, patience across time, and chemistry willing to proceed slowly. These lessons extend beyond our planet, carried outward by the understanding that life, once established, can endure in places where it was never expected to exist. The Arctic ice stretches across the ocean like a living ceiling shaped by wind, temperature, and time. It is not a static barrier, but a slow moving surface that breathes with the seasons, opening and closing without sound. Beneath it, a complete world continues, largely unseen and rarely acknowledged. This world does not wait for attention. It exists on its own terms, unfolding in darkness and cold with steady persistence. Life beneath the ice proceeds without spectacle. There are no bursts of color or sudden expansions meant to attract notice. Instead, movement is subtle and deliberate. Organisms feed, grow, and reproduce within narrow limits, guided by rhythms older than human observation. Days and nights lose meaning here. What matters is continuity, the quiet maintenance of balance that allows the system to endure. The ice above provides structure as much as shelter. It moderates temperature, controls light, and shapes the flow of nutrients. Within this protection, life organizes itself efficiently, forming layers of activity that mirror the ice itself. Each layer depends on the others, connected through slow exchanges rather than dramatic shifts. Nothing operates in isolation. Everything belongs. This world does not require recognition to function. It continues, whether observed or ignored, unaffected by curiosity or indifference. Long before instruments reached beneath the ice, these systems were already complete, refined through countless generations of adaptation. They have never paused for discovery. Their existence has always been sufficient. The absence of attention has not diminished their complexity. If anything, it has preserved it. Without interference, processes remain finely tuned to conditions that change gradually. Stability allows specialization. Specialization allows endurance. Life here follows rules shaped by constraint, favoring precision over excess and patience over speed. As surface conditions shift and access increases, fragments of this hidden world enter awareness. Yet even now, most of it remains beyond reach. Vast areas beneath the ice continue without description or record, carrying out essential roles in Earth's systems. Carbon is stored, nutrients are transformed, energy is transferred quietly upward and outward. These contributions do not announce themselves. They accumulate. This unseen continuity offers perspective. It reminds us that Earth's most important processes are not always visible or immediate. Some are slow, layered, and distant from daily experience. They operate beyond timelines of urgency, shaped instead by long balance and repetition. The planet holds more than what is easily found. The Arctic beneath the ice stands as one of these hidden systems. It does not demand protection through attention, yet it benefits from understanding. Recognizing its presence expands the idea of where life thrives and how it persists. It shows that completeness does not require exposure. As the ice continues its quiet movement and the world below carries on, the lesson remains gentle and enduring. Earth is still full of systems that exist beyond notice, sustaining themselves and the planet through restraint, balance, and time. Beneath the Arctic ice, life continues as it always has, not waiting to be seen, only continuing.